All right, so we'll begin with some review topics, rounding and estimation. We're also going to talk about some different kinds of rounding and estimation in this section. And what I'm going to do as the lesson side, the in-class portion, is I'm going to use Education Perfect. Now, your homework will actually come from the Walker book that you don't have yet. So, I'm going to, for now, I'll assign you homework through Education Perfect so that you'll have some practice exercises to do, but in future, you'll be doing your homework in the Walker book and then the lecture or the lesson through, I can't call them lectures, through through Education Perfect. Unless you just want to use Education Perfect for everything since it's, and have a common voice. Okay? Just depends. We'll see. All right? Now, the homework is not graded. It's not part of your grade. The only part of your grade that you're going to get is just the assessments. So you can choose if you want to. If you want to do something, if you want to do one, you want to do the other, that's fine. We're going to be kind of doing the same material anyway. But you do need to do the homework. Okay? I will be checking to see that you're doing the homework. And there are some things that I can do to kind of motivate you if you're not doing your homework. Okay? Sounds pretty ominous, doesn't it? But anyway, good. You should. Because if you don't do the practice, then you're not going to do well, right? Okay? So let's all just agree to do the practice. So what you're seeing and what I'm saying is all being recorded and will be available on the YouTube channel. So if you miss a day, did I explain this to you? So if you miss a day, I didn't? Okay, wow. Then you can always go to the YouTube channel for this class and watch the recording or listen to the recording. There's no watch. There's no video of you guys. It's simply what I'm saying and what I'm writing on the screen. Okay? So that way, if you do happen to miss for sports or sick or whatever, for any reason, you'll have a recording of what we did in class. That's good. But it also means that you're responsible, if you do miss, for watching or listening to the recordings and getting what we did in class, right? So don't come to me and say, you need to explain all this stuff because I missed 3 days, because I missed a week or whatever, because my parents took me to Fiji. I'm not really sympathetic about that, first of all, because I want to go. And second of all, I've taken care of it. All right? Now, does that mean you can't ask questions about what you missed? Absolutely not. Ask me anything you want to. I'm always happy to help. Also, if you're having difficulty in a homework situation and you have trouble with something, if you want to take me a picture of it and email it to me, right? Not the problem. I'm not going to do the homework for you. But what you've done, including the problem, okay, what you've written out, and then I will take a look at it. I'll write on it and show you where your mistake is and try to do any clarification that I can, and then I'll email it back to you. Okay? So technology is a pretty good thing. But make sure you send a picture of it. Don't just say I'm having trouble with number 12 or whatever. That's not going to do me any good. I won't know where to help you. If you do send me an email, the new school policy is don't send emails after 8 o'clock. It's fine. I'm just going to ignore them until then, the next morning anyway. So if we see each other the next day, go ahead and send the email so I'll have a heads up. But it won't be answered. I won't answer you to it the next day. Okay? Everybody okay with that? All right. So rounding and estimation. We're going to go through a lesson about rounding and estimation. And again, for these, I'm going to use the lessons in Education Perfect, and then I'll add to that. Which means I do not expect you to write down everything that they have written down in Education Perfect because it's all there. You can always go back to the Education Perfect exercises. So let me show you a little bit. So I want to, for those of you who haven't used it before or may not be so familiar with it, when you sign into Education Perfect and you're all enrolled in the class, I'll make sure that everybody's enrolled in the class before we leave, you're going to come up with a list of classes here. This is the teacher version, obviously. But you will have this button that says Content Library. So you can go to any content from any level ever. So if you need, just make sure you're in maths, if you need some review from a topic before, or if you have the desire to go further into the topics that we're working, right? In class, I have time to kind of go the straight and narrow, this is the level, right? But I can help direct you to more if you want more. I can help direct you to review if you need review, right? And that help direct means that I'll actually participate, not just say, click there, right? Okay, so if you let me know, because obviously I don't know you guys, so you let me know if there's something that you need, and I'll get it for you, or we'll find it. But as you see, the NCAA levels are all here, so that's that. And then here's the New Zealand curriculum. All those topics are there too. So you can go backwards to anything that you might be having difficulty with. Like, say, for example, you've forgotten how to divide integers or something. There's a lesson for that. Okay? And chances are, there's also a video for it on the YouTube channel, because I record every class I do. So, okay? So, we are starting this course Pause that for a minute. So, starting this course, we're starting with number. Okay? There we go. So we're going to be starting with number, and again, we're going to be talking about rounding and estimation. We're going to go through some of these topics, these first topics, very quickly, because again, they're meant to be review, but that doesn't mean that you've always been perfectly clear on what's going on. You're also going to see that as you move from the middle school to the senior school, that in the NCEA, from the New Zealand and from the MYP, there may be some language shifts, some vocabulary shifts. So some of the wording may be different. And so I want us all to be on the same page about that. Many, many, many of you will think that you don't know how to do the math because you don't understand what's being asked of you. Right? You can do the math. You just don't know what's being asked and don't know when to apply what's being asked. Okay? So that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we clarify, and that's one of the reasons why I want to go through these lessons. They're very good about the vocabulary. And again, you can always go back and look at them again. So, all right, sound good so far? Everybody's going to be bored and hate me after this class? Sorry. Just be happy that something's easy. That's not a bad thing. Okay? All right. So, let's pop that to the full screen. So in this section, we're going to talk a little bit about rounding. And you've done some rounding before. Anybody know this number? What do you remember this is? Pi. All right. This is a decimal approximation of pi. Approximation because they end it somewhere and it never really ends, right? And they're just showing you that how these are rounded. If you watch that, if you went a little slower, you could tell. But if you watch it for a little while, you'll see that what they're doing is rounding to each digit as they go. So we're going to start rounding using decimal places. First of all, you remember that decimal places mean things that follow the ones column, right? After the ones column, then you have a decimal point, and then anything after that is a decimal place, yeah? And also remember that it's a mirror image of what you see on the other side. So ones are the basis of our mathematical system. If you go past the decimal points, you don't get once, you get tenths, right? If you're on the other side, it's tens, right? So tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and you can tell that you're on the decimal side because you get that THS at the end of it, right? Okay, so pay close attention. I can't tell you how many people have rounded to the wrong spot because they thought it said hundred instead of hundredths. So be careful about that as you move, okay? So, all right, when you're rounding a number to a particular decimal place, we're talking about the number of decimal places. So if you round to one decimal place, that means you want one digit after the decimal place. All the rest of them are going to go away, right? So if you want 3, that means you want 3 decimals after the decimal place. What's going to happen to all the others? they're gone, right? They just disappear. They turn into zeros, and so you don't need zeros that far off, okay? But we do need to talk about, so always be careful about which digit you're rounding to or how many decimal places that they want. Remember that what you do when you round depends on the number after the number you're rounding to, right? So if I'm rounding, in this particular case, I'm rounding to 1 decimal place, right? So if I'm rounding to 1 decimal place, the number at 1 decimal place, one number after that digit is a 1. What number do I need to look at in order to round? The number where? Just right to the right of it, yeah? And that number is a 2. And so remember the rule is that if it's 5 or greater, round what? Round up. Excellent. Okay? If it's less than, that says greater than 5. If it's less than 5, round down. And rounding down means it turns into a 0. Rounding up means it turns into a 1, right? In the column before. Pretty familiar? Been doing it since you were, forever? Okay. Yet, everybody thinks it's easy, and it is one of the biggest mistakes that students make. Okay? So be very careful about how you're rounding. Even things, especially with things that look easy, that's another common trap we fall into. If it looks easy, how much studying are you going to do? None. And then when you need to use it, you're like, oh, wait a minute. What am I supposed to do? So be careful. That's a really common trap. So look at this one. Again, we're going to round to 1 decimal place. So that means the 1, right? And the number after the 1 this time is a 6. So that means that 6 is going to turn into a 1 that we're going to add to this one. So the finished answer, 6.2, right? So it's either round down to a 0 or round it up to a 1 and add it, right? Hopefully that's not new to anybody, but if it is, it's okay. Okay? So remember, 0 through 4, you round down. 5 through 9, you round up. Education Perfect is really very, very, very complete. In other words, they like to beat it to death. So you're going to see that I'm going to go through and kind of translate these for you. But it's all there for you if you want to come back and read something. And the good thing about this, though, is that if you would as we move into more difficult topics or new topics that for you, it's all there for you, right? So use this tool. It's a great tool. And every once in a while they throw in a kitten, and that can't hurt. Oh well, sorry. Year 11s, I forget. I don't like kittens as much as year 7s. So, if you're rounding to 2 decimal places in this particular point, what digit is it that is in the second decimal place? Anybody? Just sing out. 8. The 8. What digit follows the 8? 4. Will the 4 round up or down? Down, which basically just means it disappears, right? So my completed answer, 3.18. Okay? Are you going to be happy with this first homework lesson? I hope so. Good. Okay. Now, the only place that so here's an example. We do that in class. This is what I'm talking about, the in-class examples we would normally be doing. But I'm going to move forward a little bit in this particular lesson a little faster, right? If you have questions, ask me. Don't think that means I think you should know this. It just means that I think we can go a little faster on this in the interest of time. Now, the only real problem that most people, or one of the big problems that most people have with rounding is here. What happens when you're rounding, and this one says round to 3 decimal places, the number in the 3rd decimal place happens to be a 9. Well, what happens if, and the number I'm rounding is also a 9. So that we're eating any number from 5 or above. So that means I'm going to round what? Up, which means add 1 to the number in front. Well, if I add 1 to this 9, what's it going to become? 10. So that is actually going to then add 1 to that number, right? So be careful about that. So that means that it ends up being the 3 that changes, right? So you end up with 12.44. Now, they put the, sorry about that. They put the extra 0 at the end. Do you need to? No. And I really hate it that they put the number at the end of a sentence, because now it's got a period at the end of it, right? A full stop, which means it looks like another decimal. So be careful. That's not. So here's your rounded form. Don't put the decimals at the far end. Yes. You want 3 digits after the decimal point. You could put it's not necessary. It's not going to count it wrong if you don't. Okay? Now, there's an area where it will, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay? And that's when it asks you for what are called significant digits. And so then you're going to need to have so many digits no matter what. Yes, I'm sorry.
I was wondering if they get marked down.
No. I would actually look at it funny if you did put the 0. I wouldn't mark it down, though. And no, and you won't on the exams either, right? No one is going to expect that 0. It's right now, it's there in the lesson for effect. But even though it says 3 decimal places, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay? Now, if it wanted significant digits, that's still a bit different. Okay? All right. Let's just go with that. And I'll be grading your test, so you'll be all right. Your externals are not going to have that on there. So this is an example of what the homework is going to look like. So these are the homework sections that you would do. If you do choose to do Education Perfect, and I'll assign these for you if you want to. Now I have to, because y'all don't have your books yet anyway. So you're going to see the Education Perfect homework. It's always in the purple sections. Now, I'm going to put the yellow sections on there. The yellow sections are the I. Let me show you what I mean by that. Do you see, when you look at the contents over here, these sections, the information sections, those are the ones we just went over together in class. You do not have to reread those. What you need to do, right, is just go to these purple ones. You also don't have to worry about these red target ones. It's a game thing that you could do if you want to, but I don't have it set up really for you for these classes. So these purple ones are the ones that you're going to be worried about. So you're going to get an estimate of time that it's going to take to do this assessment, okay? And it includes as if you were going to read all those, all right? It shouldn't take that much time as it estimates. Now, also, you hopefully will have read your notes and practiced before, looked at things before you just jump right into the homework. It's a really bad habit just to go straight into the work. Before you start this, read through your notes, right? If you've taken any, because some of you are going, okay, why are we learning some 6th grade topic? But so if you take any, read through your notes, then go to your homework, right? Make sure you're working smarter. All right, so all you're responsible for, the purple, but I will leave the yellow parts in the assignment in case you want to go back and read something for clarification. All right, but you don't have to redo all of those. You can just skip right through them and it won't affect the grade that it gives you. Everybody okay with that? Most of you have used Education Perfect before, yeah? Okay, we use all of it. Some teachers use it a lot, some teachers don't use it at all. Okay? All right. Let's talk a little bit about rounding to what are called significant figures. Now, this is one where they want a specific number of digits, and you have to use only those digits. Everything they don't want will just simply turn into a 0. And sometimes you need those zeros, and sometimes you don't. If it's after the decimal point, do you need the zeros? No. But if it's before the decimal points, in the 1s, 10s, or whatever, then you have to have the zeros, otherwise you'll turn 6,400 into 64. You can't do that. So this is what's happening here. So if you look at this number, I'm just going to go through this really quickly. They want this rounded to 2 significant figures. That means that all I'm going to keep are the first 2 digits. and everything after that becomes zeros. And notice that they didn't write the zeros after the decimal point because they're meaningless. You can assume that there is a decimal point and then an infinite number of zeros at the end. Who cares? They have no meaning after you get past that point. Here's the number rounded to 3 significant digits. And so if you look at the first 3 digits, they kept them. Okay? Then 4 significant digits means that they just kept the first 4. Now notice all of these have been rounding off. They've kept the numbers small. So they're just writing these with significant figures. They're not rounding. Because if you look at that one, if you were going to that last one, that 5 would have turned that 4 into a 5. So all they're talking about is significant figures at this point. They're not talking about rounding to significant figures. They're just talking about writing it with that many significant figures. Okay? So pay attention to the directions. Okay? Because otherwise that would have been a different number, right? If you were rounding. So if it says write this many significant figures, that's different than round to this many significant figures. Right? Are we okay with that? Hopefully we will be. You'll get some practice. You'll love it. Now, so here's just another one, the placeholder zeros. Look at the decimal one though. In the decimal one, there are zeros, 3 significant figures, right? There's 3 significant figures. But you do have to keep these placeholder zeros because they're after the decimal point. Right? So be careful that you're not changing the value of a number. Okay? If you lost those zeros, you would have that, which is completely wrong. Right? Doesn't mean the same number. So be careful that you're not dropping zeros when you're not supposed to. You have to have these placeholder zeros to keep these numbers in their right spot. Okay? If it all turned into zeros, would you need them? No. But if you have zeros between those, you will. Okay? Then you're going to enter your homework. So you're going to play with those. Just asking that. Now let's look at a couple where we are actually rounding to significant figures. Significant digits, same difference. All right. So here they give you a big number. Give you a big number. Shouldn't be writing in purple. They are. Then they want you to look at these and round it to 2 significant figures. Look at the difference. It doesn't say right. It says what? Round. So that means rounding rules apply. So that 8 is going to turn that 1 into a 2. And since it's not a decimal number, I have to have placeholder zeros to keep the value. Right? Now, what if that had been 0.618 and I rounded it to 2 significant figures? It'd be 0.62, and do I need the zeros after it? Nope. Okay? So you see the difference between when you have a decimal number or if you have a whole number. Okay? Always significant digits mean the first ones you come to, by the way. Yeah, not these, but the first one, the first numbers you hit, that's where you start counting. Okay? Always from right to left. Okay. Here they do one with a decimal, so they just take the first 2 numbers that happen after the decimal point. Those are the ones you're going to use. 1 is going to round down, so everything after that turns into zeros, which you don't need. You see it? So just go until you find a non-zero number, and that's your first significant digit, second significant digit, third, whatever. Okay. And then they go through some examples, but I think we can deal with not going through those examples. All right. Everybody okay with that? Now, we do need to go into and talk a little bit about rounding sensibly. So let's look at this lesson. Rounding sensibly is because in some cases it makes more sense to round to a specific digit. Anybody give me a classic example of that? Look in your wallet, maybe? Yeah, were you about to say that? Yeah. Money, right? We don't use 5 decimal places for money, do we? Money is always rounded to how many? 2 decimal places, right? So that's an area where it's rounded to a specific digit. So, and there are other cases where it wouldn't make sense. If I was going to, for example, be cutting a piece of wood and I ended up with some measurement that had 16 decimal places, would I use all 16? No, we'd pull it into millimeters or something, so maybe 1 decimal place or something like that. Okay? So in some cases it makes sense to round in a specific way. And in general, they'll tell you. Okay? But some of them are so well known, like the money one, they're not going to tell you to round to 2 places. They'll just count it wrong. So look at this one. If you calculate that big decimal divided by the 4.8, you're going to end up with a huge long decimal number. Okay? So do I write all those decimals, all those digits after the decimal in my answer? Probably not. Okay? Now, if you're on, say, in a calculus class or something, and you do that, you write them all down. But there are some rules for if you're allowed to round. And in this area, we're allowed to round, clearly, or else we wouldn't be doing rounding first. So we're going to choose, so we need to talk about how we're going to round our number if we're doing this in an applied number. If you're just doing pure math, just perform the calculation, are you allowed to round? Only if they tell you to. But we're talking about an applied problem. So like a story problem, word problem. What do y'all call them here? Applied problems or word problems or? Word problems? Y'all okay with that? You know what I'm talking about then, right? You know, the train leaves the station, that kind of thing. So in an applied problem, you're generally allowed to round. But there are some rules that we need to follow to make sure. Okay? And they differ depending on the operation that you're working with. Okay? So you're going to have to pay attention to what operation you're working with. And so the first one is talking about how you round when you have multiplication and division. There's a rule for rounding from multiplication and division, and that is you always use the one with the smallest number of significant figures. Okay? So in other words, the smallest number. Don't use a bunch of zeros at the end, right? Then that's not significant. So in this case, you have the top number, it's 7.2423, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 digits, right? In the bottom number, you have 4.8, yeah, which is 2 digits. So what do you think you're going to round to? 2 digits, right? Just look at this one that's the smallest one, and that's what your answer should look like. It should look like the smallest one, okay? So you see they did the division. Oops, I'm writing on the wrong thing. So they did the division. They got this huge thing. The smallest number was 4.8. Yes? You got it.
Use the smallest number.
That's to tell you where you're going to round. Okay? So how many digits does the smallest number have? 2, right? Well, that means your answer should have how many digits? 2. All right? Makes sense? Okay? So if the smallest... So you're always looking at the smallest number to see how many digits your answer should have. So just hypothetically, what if that bottom number had 3 digits? Then your answer should have what? 3 digits. Okay? So that means I would use 1.50, which would still turn into 1.5. Why? Because you don't need that 0. There you go. Okay? So get it? Now, the problem with students have here is this. That is only the rule for, what button did I push? That is only the rule for multiplication or division. It's pretty good, actually. I meant to really highlight that, but I didn't mean to highlight it. All right, so multiplication and division. Okay? There's a different rule for addition and subtraction. So be aware of what operation. And you're going to get practice doing this. So you're in good shape. So for addition and subtraction, you don't just use the number of digits. You're looking at the one that has the smallest number of decimal places. So multiplication and division just uses the number of digits. Addition and subtraction uses the number of decimal places. Okay? So the smallest number of decimal places. So look at the example they give. They take 4.62 and 9.5371, and they're adding them together this time, right? When they add them together, they get this big number. But we don't have to, if it's an applied problem, now if it was just like this, would you keep all those decimals? Yep. But if this was an applied problem, then you wouldn't. You would be able to round it. Or if they said you could round it, right? You have to have permission to do that. Then you just find the one with the smallest number of decimals, which is the 4.62. How many decimal places does it have? 2. So how many decimal places should your answer have? 2. And notice that there is no 6 after that decimal point. How did they get that 6? Rounding. So make sure you're following the rounding rules. If you're going to round it off to 2 decimal places, then you follow the rounding rules. We're not talking just truncate the number, just drop it off. We're talking about follow the rounding rules. Okay? So, multiplication. Smallest number of digits. Addition or subtraction. Smallest number of decimals. Okay? We good? Keeping them separate is different. And that might be something that is new to you, because most of the time you don't bother with that when you're in younger grades.
Can we go back a slide, please?
Of course we can. And what you did was perfect. Please always ask in class. Don't let me outrun you. Because I know this, and so I will. And so if you have questions, raise those hands, sing out, yell. I don't care. Just get my attention and listen. Okay? Please don't be embarrassed to ask questions. Okay? So here, addition and subtraction. Keep doing that, don't I? Addition and subtraction, smallest number of decimal places. That's what you should have in your notes. You don't need everything. And then the example next to it's fine. Okay? Remember, we're doing the split page thing. So addition and subtraction, smallest number of decimal places. And then the example next to it. We talked about the notes, right? Okay? And then multiplication and division, smallest number of digits. So it's either digits or decimal places, depending on the operations. Okay? It's all right if you're not doing it yet. We'll get there. All right? Now, let's see what's next. So there you go. There's a calculation to do. They have these 3 numbers, adding or subtracting, or multiplication or division. Adding and subtracting. So that means I don't care about digits. I care about what? Decimal places. Smallest number has how many decimal places? No, guys, come on. The smallest number of decimal places is 1. So that means my answer will have how many decimal places in it? 1. There you go. Y'all, I love that. You'll make it harder than it is. Trying to think I'm tricking you. I will never trick you. I hate that. I used to have those math teachers that did that. Put a problem on the test that can't be worked. Differential equations. Forgot his name. Oh well, who cares? Kreminsky. Now I remember. Dr. Kreminsky. He always did that to us. Graduate level differential equations. And he would put questions on there that couldn't be answered so we would know the difference. Evil man. So if you're ever in the States and take math and you see Dr. Kreminsky's name, don't take that class. All right. And there you go. We're going to just go into some examples and exercises. Let's talk about money. There's only one thing you need to remember about rounding money, is that it's always rounded to how many decimal places? 2. And here's the one that I want you to be concerned about. All right? Say you have 2999 as your number, right? When I round it to, it's money, so I'm going to round it to here, right? So that means that 9 is going to add a 1 to that digit, which is going to turn it into 290, but that means so it's going to turn that into a 10, which means that 9 is also going to round. So I end up with that. Is that good enough? No. Nope. That is the only place. Money is the only place where it doesn't matter if they're all zeros. You need to represent the 2 decimal places. Always, 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 always. Okay? Oops, actually, that'd come to $3, wouldn't it? Sorry. It was a trick to see if you were paying attention. Don't ever believe that. I'm a human being. I make mistakes just like everybody else. Okay? So it rounds to $3. But you do need... I'm reinventing the mathematical system for you. Now you have to do it my way. No, just kidding. So now you make sure you need, on money, you need the 2 decimal places. So I don't want to see that as an answer. That's not an answer for if it's money, right? Right, so that would be 210. Right, with money, you always have 2 decimal places, even if they're zeros. Okay? It's one of the few things you'll ever have to do that with. Can't think of any other reason why you'd need them. Money is the only place. Okay? All right. So I think that's all I have to say about money, but we'll see. Nearest cent, so it's going to be decimal places. This is just an aside, who cares, but it might be interesting for you to know that if you're doing money, if you're spending money, because what's the smallest New Zealand coin? 10 cents. So there are no pennies, so they round. And rounding in money for retailers, they use what's called Swedish Rounding, where the 5 cents rounds down to a 0. And 6 and above round up. But is that the way you're going to round? No, unless you open a shop, don't worry about it. But if you ever go to the store and you're wondering why, it says like 295 and then it rounds down to 290, that's why. Because 5 should normally round up, right? But in money, they round it down. Okay? All right. Let's see. What do we got? Rounding sensibly and applied examples. So look at a couple of examples of this. So here we have a problem. Well, they give you this formula for area of... kind of keep right on that. Like for area, right? So you're going to take pi times the radius squared. And I wrote the multiplication in there. Ooh, do y'all use a dot for multiplication? Probably not. Well, I do. Get used to it. So you don't really need it because pi, and if you have 2 things crammed together like that, what does it always mean? What operation? It always means times or multiplication, right? So I just wrote it in there for you to kind of accentuate that. Since those are multiplied, what is the rule? You look for the number with the smallest number of digits. There you go. Okay? And in this case, it's 2.9 is the only number because pi is a symbol on your calculator. You're not going to turn that into, and besides that, even if you did, it has lots more digits than 2.9. So that means it's going to have, your answer is going to have how many digits in this case? 2, because it's 2.9. You're going to use all the number of digits, right? Not decimals, digits. Now, if you were adding and subtracting, this would have 1 decimal. So pay attention in applied problems, especially those of the formula. Did you multiply? Then it's smallest number of digits. Did you add or subtract? Then it's smallest number of what? If you add or subtract, then it's the smallest number of decimals. So it doesn't matter if it's an applied problem or not. So here, if you did that problem, it would be area equals pi on your calculator. I expect you to use pi on your calculator. Don't do 3.14. Use the symbol pi. You're not going to multiply anything in this class. Come on, guys. Right? You've got a machine. So, and times 2.9 squared. It doesn't matter. I don't want after you square it. What is the only number they give you? 2.9. It's got 2 digits. It's multiplication, so your answer will have 2 digits. Let's see what that looks like at the end. There you go. So 26 meters squared. Here's what you really get. 26.42, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Are we all right? Now,
What is this YouTube channel?
the YouTube channel is just my name, Russell Self. So, all right? And so it's out there. I tend to post these at the end of the day. That's when I usually have time. If I have not posted it and you want to see it, email me and say, hey, wait a minute, you forgot to do it, because I will. Now, we still have estimation to do, but we can do that. We'll do that next time.
Yeah. My notes look so much nicer.
Do they? All organized and put together? Good. And you see why I can't model the behavior, because I want y'all to see the Education Perfect stuff. I am going to make a homework assignment based on what we've done. It's on Education Perfect. It's not due immediately, but you need to do it immediately.
Yes. I missed your class yesterday, so
Okay.
I don't know
The note-taking? No problem.
What
What you're going to do is you're just going to divide the page in half. And you can fold it, draw a line, or just imagine it. It doesn't matter to me. And you'll put the notes on this side, the directions, and then the examples on this side. Okay?
Sounds
So
good.
just to
Thank
keep you focused. Thank you so much, ladies. Have a wonderful day. Hopefully this wasn't a horrible day. Hi.
I'm a little bit confused about like the note taking, because it's not really clear what it is doing.
Sure, because I'm not modeling it. Yeah. So like.
Like everything. I think
Okay, so like this one, if I was doing this one, I would do.
Sorry, do you want a pen?
I think I have something. Oh, look at that. That figures, doesn't it? So if I were doing this one, for example, I would say for multiplication and division, or division, whichever way you want to write it. Okay. You use smallest number of digits, right? Example. Oops. So there's the rule, right?
Yeah.
So example, and then whatever the example was, we did. Okay.
Yeah. So
Now,
nothing
and
in
if you-
for now.
Yeah, there's not really. Yeah, and if there ever are, then I will literally write them on this so that you can see it. If there's a number of steps, but in this, it's pretty much just a series of rules.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.